Hi, welcome back. So in this lesson, we are going to be looking at graphing a line, or graphing a linear equation using only 2 points, the y-intercept and the gradient. Now, before we can go on, we kind of need to understand a couple of things. One of them being, what is the y-intercept? And quite simply, the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. And that is exactly what the y-intercept is. Now, as it turns out, in our rule for a straight line, there is a section of this formula that explicitly tells us where the y-intercept is. And the next thing we need to understand is how to find the gradient. And put simply, the gradient is our rise over run. That means if we rise by this many, we need to run by this many. For us to be able to accurately calculate this, we need to also understand that any whole number is represented in a fraction as that number over 1. So when your gradient in your rule for a straight line reads a whole number, you are going to simply put it over 1. So a gradient of 2 will equal 2 over 1. A gradient of 3 will equal 3 over 1, and so on. That's what we're looking at. So to start with, let's come over to our Cartesian plane here. And we are going to use the formula y equals 3x plus 4. Now, our y-intercept is the first point that we can identify very easily, because ultimately, to plot a line or to graph linear equations on a Cartesian plane, all we need is 2 points. We need a start point and an end point. So we're actually going to start from the y-intercept. Now, in our rule for a straight line, the y-intercept is always this point here. So for this formula, we know that no matter what point along this line, it is actually going to cross the y-axis at positive 4. So let's put a dot there just to start with. Bang, straight away. The next one we need to work out is our gradient. Well, gradient in our formula is actually referred to as m. Now, in the formula y equals mx plus c, we can see that 3 is our gradient. But what did we say at the start of the video? Any whole number as a fraction is represented as that number, 3 over 1. Now, this means that 3 over 1 is our rise over run. So from our first point here, from our y-intercept, we are going to come up by 3. So 1, 2, 3 here. And we're going to run by 1, which is right there. Now, that gives us our start point and our end point for our line. Now, if we wanted to continue on with that gradient, we could, and we go 1, 2, up by 3, over by 1. Up by 3 again, over by 1. And you can see that using that start point and that gradient, we definitely start to get one line. And that's how we graph linear equations using the y-intercept and the gradient.